Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to Chilltown Hoops. I'm your host, Jermaine. The youngsters call me OG. My friends call me J-Dub. Let's get to it. When you get to the playoffs, whatever your game is or whatever your game was, it now has to be more. And there are a lot of guys who can't really handle that. And that's how you separate the better players. So if you got a role player who now has to move into a starring role, that might be tough for him. But we could also find out from that guy that he excels in that role and now he turns into a star. Like, wait a minute, we had this guy as a role player only to find out that maybe he's a lot better than that. And then there's guys who we had them as stars in the regular season and then they wither in the playoffs. Now, mind you, in the playoffs, the competition is better. So your game is going to get raised. But there are things that are going to suffer because of that. Like your field goal percentage might drop. Your shots might drop. Things like that. But the better players, you know who they are. And you know who they are right from the beginning. So, for example, Giannis Antetokounmpo is a guy that I know for a fact at some point he's going to get going. Because Giannis has that kind of game where he imposes his will on you. And there's nothing that you can do to stop that. At some point, that's going to happen. I equate it to Shaq. I equate it to Jabbar, Olajuwon. When those guys were running around where they might have a bad game or they might have a subpar game, but I can guarantee that you won't see that often. Because I'm good enough where I don't have to make that many adjustments. So when I look at the Boston Celtics, what they did was they did a really good job at letting Giannis bring the game to them. Horford, Grant Williams, I thought they did a really good job in letting Giannis bring the fight to them and stand in their ground. Well, Giannis recognized that I could bring the fight to them, but I'm going to bring it to them in a different way. I'm going to bring it to them by opening up the offense. And how does Giannis open up the offense? Same way I talked about a couple of days ago, where he now recognizes, because this is also a part of being smarter. He now recognizes that I have a weapon in my game that makes me even more lethal, which is the mid-range. So now, when he has the mid-range, which is what they would live with, but with him having the mid-range, now I can pick and choose whatever I want to do. Because now I can go to the basket whenever I feel like it. I can stop and pop whenever I feel like it. I'm not a big fan of him shooting the long ball, especially in transition, and I know he wants to add that to his game. I'm not a big fan of that, but he can hit it from time to time. But I'd much rather him do what he's been doing, which is playing in the mid-range, where I get Grant Williams backing off me 17 feet, and he'll pop that 17-footer right in his eye. So now what has to happen is that the defense sinks, and it collapses because guys now have to respect that. Well, what Milwaukee did was Milwaukee ran a lot of 1-4 flat, especially with Giannis on the wing. Well, with Giannis being on the wing and them running 1-4 flat, they cleaned out almost the whole right side of the floor, where Giannis had Grayson Allen on the wing, or he might have had Connaughton on the wing. So it was just him. It was just him and Grant Williams, or him and Horford. So Horford had to pick his poison. So if Horford comes up, Giannis attacks him. And now I got Brook Lopez on the right box. I got Bobby Portis on the right box, who I can drop it off to because Giannis is such a great playmaker. I don't expect Jason Tatum to have a 4 for 19 game. And this is what I'm talking about when I go back to him playing in the mid-range. I mean, he took 19 shots and everything. There wasn't anything in between. It was either shooting the long ball or going to the basket. There was nothing in between. Now, you can have games like that. I've seen Jordan have bad games. I've seen James have bad games in the playoffs. But these guys, they start to figure out what works. And the reason why they start to figure out what works is because the game starts to slow down for them. And the game hasn't slowed down just yet for Jason Tatum, but he's getting there. I don't expect him to have a 4 for 19 game. You know, he falls in love with that long ball a little bit too much for me. Went 0 for 6 on the long ball. Al Horford has been a sight for sore eyes for Boston. Let me tell you. We're talking about a guy who he gives them everything he is on defense. He gives them everything he is on the backboard. He's the consummate blue-collar guy who can give you legit offense. And he gave them that. Absolutely. 17 rebounds, 3 offensive rebounds, which is a big deal. Because second chance points, opportunity for second chance points, especially in a series like this, it's a big deal. And the reason why it's a big deal is because points are at a premium when you get in the playoffs, especially easy points. They're at a premium when you get into the playoffs. I said that Jaylen Brown was the X factor in this series, and I still stand on that. I think the difference in this game was Jason Tatum. He didn't give them much offensively. He gave them a lot defensively. And not only did he give them a lot defensively, that front court gave them a lot defensively. I mean, they had 13 blocks, and 10 of them came from Tatum, Grant, and Robert Williams. Now, that means that I could be so much more aggressive on the wing when I got rim protectors like that behind me. It just means that I could be so much more aggressive. Jason Tatum was that much more aggressive. He wasn't a complete wash. I mean, he did have 4 blocks in that game. He absolutely did that. So he wasn't a complete wash in the game. But I expect to see a different effort from Boston. I thought that Jrue Holiday would outplay Marcus Smart, and I thought that Wesley Matthews did a good job on him as well. Pat Connaughton is one of the better D&3 guys in the game, and I think he's going to continue to do that. It's just that Jaylen Brown knows he can't get outplayed by Connaughton. He can't get outplayed by Grayson Allen like he did in Game 1, and that hasn't happened since then, and I just don't see that happening again from him just because of what he brings. You know, where he gets going, once he gets going offensively, and he's one of those guys defensively where that could dictate his game as well. So I'm not listening to any logic about officiating. Was Marcus Smart fouled on the 3? Well, yeah, he was. And it should have been a 3. If you saw Jrue Holiday's face, he knew he screwed that up. And that should have been a 3-point shot. However, let's make sure we remember that from I think it was 4:30 in the third quarter, the last 4 minutes and 30 seconds in the third quarter until the game was over. That includes the fourth quarter. These are how many free throws the Milwaukee Bucks shot. They didn't shoot any free throws in the fourth quarter. None. And I'm 100% confident that the Milwaukee Bucks were not the only team that was fouling on shots. They got 11 free throws in the fourth quarter alone. So the officiating logic, I will not entertain that. I will not entertain that at all. So, and since we're on the subject of officiating, I thought that the refs did a good job in game 3 in Memphis. Yo, officiating is a very difficult job, man. Let me tell you, because it's not almost like this. It's exactly like having to be right all the time. Now, there are instances where, you know, calls get challenged and things like that, but I have very little margin for error as an official. I have to get it right. The better officials, they get 95% of their calls right. The better ones, the ones in the playoffs, they get 95% of their calls right. I mean, that's pretty good. That's really good. Now, Clay and Steph, I thought they did a better job offensively. Desmond Bane shot the ball better, but the Golden State Warriors, man, when you talk about offense and you talk about action off the basketball, I think they're the best in the game. When you talk about action off the basketball, the problem that we have is we still see Steph, Clay, and Dre. Not we. I don't see these guys like that. But there's a lot of people who still see Steph, Clay, and Dre like they did 5-6 years ago. You know that this trio has been together for 10 years now? 10. That's longer than Jabbar, Worthy, and Magic. That's longer than Pippen and Jordan. That's longer than Bird, McHale. Well, actually, it's not longer than Bird, McHale, because Bird, McHale, and Robert Parrish were together for 13 years, and they weren't nearly as good. We expect these guys, a lot of people expect these guys to be what they were years ago. And we forget that, a lot of people forget that, Clay hasn't played basketball. Clay just started playing basketball in the NBA 3 months ago after being out 2 years. He hasn't played in 2 years. Up until 3 months ago, he hasn't played in the NBA in 2 years. And a lot of people expect to see the same Clay, and that's not realistic. Clay is trying to prove that I can hold up. Not, I'm still Klay Thompson from 2017 or 2019. No, I'm just trying to prove that I can hold up, that I can stay healthy and compete more than anything, that I can do that. And I think that he's done a good job in doing that. I thought Desmond Bane did a good job in handling him in the first 2 games. I thought that Klay Thompson was really good in game 3. Shot over 50%, shot the long ball. He was really good. But Golden State's defense overall, because I can talk about what Jordan Poole did, because Jordan Poole is one of those guys who was just a sight for sore eyes. Him, but the other guy, just like Jaylen Brown, is with Boston. I mean, Andrew Wiggins to me is like finding money in a dryer. Like, damn, I didn't know I had this. Where did this extra $60 come from? Where did this extra $100 come from? That's who Andrew Wiggins is. Like, wow, I forgot I had this. And then when you implement it, it's like, wow, this really helps. But Andrew Wiggins is so quiet and he so just goes about his job, you don't really pay attention to him. And now, defensively, this Golden State team, I thought they did a great job with Memphis in the second half. They outscored Memphis 81-55. And I'm well aware that Golden State has always had one of the better second half teams in the game. Always. One of the better second half teams in the game. Jaren Jackson hasn't been doing much for them defensively. I mean, he had 2 rebounds in the second half and a block shot. He's not really giving them much. That's not going to help them at all. I thought they did a good job on Memphis's bench. Tyus Jones didn't really give them much. Zaire Williams didn't give them much, even though Zaire Williams started. But he's a bench guy. He didn't give them much. I thought they did a really good job. I thought Golden State did a really good job defensively on them. And now that they've lost Ja, who's probably not going to play in Game 4. Now, a lot of people think that, well, Memphis is over. Well, just so you know, I think Memphis is 20-2 without Ja in the lineup. I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, they can play without him, and they can be really good without him. So, I think that this series, I thought that they would be over I thought it would be over in 5 games, and I'd be shocked if it went 6. I still think that Milwaukee Bucks series goes 6. I think Milwaukee could beat them in 6. And I didn't say anything about it before, but they really miss Chris Middleton. They do. They really miss him. I mean, Jrue Holiday shot 30 shots. You take half of those shots away from Jrue Holiday, that's now Chris Middleton. That's another ball handler that they don't have. That's another playmaker that they don't have. That's another shot maker that they don't have. And they really miss that. That's why I said that Jaylen Brown is going to be the difference in this series. Because if Chris Middleton was playing, he wouldn't be. Because I don't think he'd outplay Chris Middleton. I do not. It would be completely different. So they really miss him. But they've been really good, though. I think Game 4 tonight is going to be the telltale game. If they could put Boston in a 3-1 hole, they put a stranglehold on this series. And since we're on the subject of that, of roaring back, the way that the Philadelphia 76ers were playing, I couldn't see this series being competitive. I thought Miami would beat them in 5 games, even if Joel Embiid came back. But then Joel comes back, and just his presence alone, it's like your big brother showed up. And now, you walk a little bit taller. Stick your chest out a little bit further. And that's what happened with the Philadelphia 76ers, how much tougher they got. Now I got my rim protector behind me, right? Now I got my rebounder behind me. Because again, I can't reiterate this enough, guys. When you got a guy on your team who's 30 and 11, everything that we're doing, everything is centered around him, both offensively and defensively. Everything that we're doing. And when that's gone, that means we got to switch up everything we're doing. Now we get him back, Tobias Harris can play his game. I thought that I was going to see the same James Harden that I've seen throughout the playoffs over the last couple of years. And he turned it on last night in the fourth quarter. He absolutely turned it on last night in the fourth quarter. No doubt about that. 16 points. Turned it on 4 for 6 on the long ball. Yeah, turned it on last night. And he looked really good. I was impressed with him. Now, the question is, what do they do moving forward? Because Philadelphia was great defensively. They were great defensively. Shut the door on Tyler Hero. He didn't score in the second half. Nothing. And he's their punch off the bench. Right? He's their punch off the bench. They did a good job on him and Victor Oladipo. I really want to commend Eric Spoelstra for the coach that he is. Well, what do you mean the coach that he is? For him to run things where I get Jimmy Butler in switches with Joel Embiid, who is one of the better defenders in the league, and tell Jimmy, go after him. That's brilliant. Because I got a big guy. This isn't Giannis covering Jimmy Butler, right? This isn't one of those guys that's just athletic. Joel Embiid is not the flea of foot guy. He's not the fleest of foot guys, right? So I thought it was a great plan to have Spoelstra, when Spoelstra said, we get Jimmy Butler in switches with Joel Embiid and go after him. I thought that was fantastic. I thought that Philadelphia did a good job early in attacking their zone because everything was over the top. Now, the problem that we have is that they didn't get the ball to Joel enough. I don't think that they went to that enough because Miami stayed in that zone. And I don't think that they went to that nearly as much as they could have. And if they want to continue to be competitive in this series, that's something that they have to do. Absolutely, that's something that they have to do. I thought Oladipo was good in the second in the game. I didn't think he was great. I thought he was good defensively. I thought that helped. George Niang actually came to the party. I mean, Philadelphia, they got a lot from their starters, but George Niang actually showed up to the party. And, when you got D and 3 guys like him, their production is crucial because if you're not playing, you can't really help us. If you're not doing your job, you can't really help us at all. So, man, I really did enjoy that. I still think that I think that this series could go 6, maybe 7 games. It can. The winner of Game 5, just so you guys know, the winner of Game 5 wins the series, I think 75% of the time. That's 3 out of 4. Now, it's a lot less difficult winning Game 2 on your home floor as it is Game 5. Well, why is it more difficult? Because the loser of Game 5 now is in an elimination game. And now all the heat is on them, whether they're going on the road or they're coming home. All the heat's on them. So this series is definitely going to be something. No doubt about that. We all know when you watch that Phoenix Suns team, they go with Chris Paul. Absolutely. They go with Chris Paul. And the difference in this series has been one thing and one thing only. Turnovers. 3 of the last 4 games, they averaged almost 17 turnovers a game. There's your difference in the ball game. They did a great job on Luka. Don't let what you saw with the numbers fool you. I mean, they held Luka. Don't let the fact that Luka went for 26 and Luka went 5 for 18 in the second half and 0 for 6 on the long ball in the second half. I thought they did a good job in switching. I thought they did a good job in getting hands on him. I thought they did a good job in pushing him away from the basket and forcing him into tough shots. I thought they did a great job in that. Jay Crowder got going. In addition to him getting going, I thought he did a good job on Luka. The difference in this game is Chris Paul. Number one, he should not have been in the game. He should not have been in the game in those last 3 minutes of the second quarter. He wasn't going to do much to soften what was going on. I mean, you got a team in Dallas that was, they shot almost 60% on the long ball in the first half. That was the difference in them offensively. They shot almost 60% in the first half from the floor. They got going early. But having Chris Paul off the floor for the majority of the second half, that killed them. That means that now I can't go to DeAndre Ayton as much as I want to. He can't be nearly as aggressive because my primary playmaker is off the floor. Devin Booker has to do all of it now because now I'm off the floor. I can't create shots for him. Same thing with Mikal Bridges. My floor leader is gone. So Chris Paul has to be smarter. It's not that he's slowing down, because I don't think he is. It's just that he has to be smarter and take better care of the basketball. He has to get them to take better care of the basketball. Almost 17 turnovers in 3 games per game. That we're not going to beat anybody doing that. We're just not. It's not going to happen. So these playoffs are awesome. You guys know it. I love it. And I'm going to be here. So until then, take it light. Take it.